Hello, this is Michael Rees. Welcome to Ad Hoc, a virtual talk series. I'm a sculptor and new media naut. I'm here to have fun and sharp conversations with some of the smartest people in art, technology, and sculpture. My interests and those of our guests will range far and wide and focus on making and the artist's role in our current era. We'll be talking to artists, curators, designers, and more. Welcome to Ad Hoc.
I have a show open in London right now at Palisade.
And you have a show open in London. That's
Palisade
fantastic.
Art House, yeah.
And at the same time, you also teach at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago.
Yes, I'm a professor.
We share that. Yeah.
Yes, right, we share that.
Not the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, but.
Are you a full now? Are you a full?
I'm
or
full. I call myself a made man.
I'm a full too.
It's a.
That means we can't. Yeah. That means.
It's mafia.
We can be ourselves.
That's right.
We ain't got nothing to lose. Yeah.
We ain't got nothing to lose. That's right. Yeah. That's exactly right. Well, good. Well, I thought it would be interesting today to discuss, and we did sort of begin a conversation to discuss the relationship, first of all, of sculpture and photography and cinema and all of those realms, and how that manifests itself in a unique way in your work. It's a place that you and I share, and then also with this new media, the augmented reality or mixed reality that both of us have been early adopters of, it becomes more pronounced. So, how would you characterize your relationship to that?
I think I gave the clue. I knew I was giving the clue when I said I was an art historian who began, and also even as a young person, I mean, when I was an art historian, I was a young person. I was, in my early mid-20s. Right. And so my obsession was with that time period. So I was interested in the fiction, the philosophy of the Enlightenment, and that moment of crystallization where we became modern, the beginning of modernity. And so at that point, you had the invention of the first computers, right? Ada Lovelace. Suddenly I thought, am I saying your name right? And computer. So that was the first thinking machines, right. Babbage and automatons, ideas about robots, and more sophisticated versions of perspective machines. I was also interested in the Renaissance and the construction of perspective. That's why I became an architect, actually. And then in the period that I'm interested in, it was early pinhole photography, came even before that, and photography apparatus, the first apparatus. And so that led me to being a person who happened to be living in Berlin, and someone threw me free tickets to Toy Story 01 in pre-release at the Berlinale Film Festival. And I had no interest in cartoons because my mom was an intellectual and didn't let me watch TV. But I looked at the ads and I thought, oh my God, it looks like a Renaissance painting. It looks like Montaigne. And so I had to see it. And I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, it is Montaigne, except that it was some kind of combination between an architectural perspective construction and a photographic image. So that was 95, before I knew you, but I think we met shortly after that. You were already doing it, I think, at that point. You were preceding me, but we were peers.
Didn't we meet?
From Michelle Thirst.
I was thinking maybe the first time we met was when we went to Turkey.
I don't remember, but it was around there. I think we knew each other. Yeah, but when was that?
I think that was in the late 90s.
All right. So with me, it was 95 because I had to look up the date and I could find it out because it was when Toy Story was in pre-release. And I saw that and I was so astonished that I felt like it was an epiphany.
Yeah.
And that we had reached phase 3 of issues of representation. And as I said, I studied art history and architectural history. My period was the transition into the photographic age. And I thought, this is it. We're transiting now. We are about to transit into the post-photographic age, the age of computer simulation, and the idea of the simulated model, which we can talk a little bit about. And I thought, this is big. At that point, I came back to United States. I'd been living in Germany for 10 years because nobody was doing it over there. And I felt I had to learn it. And it wasn't easy to access this technology. In the States, they were doing it because of Pixar.
Yeah.
Industry.
And it was massively expensive
right.
Leading up to the 2000s. It was unbelievable.
It was pre-personal computer. You had to, although when I started, I think you could do, I learned on a Unix computer. So it was a silicon graphics machine, but it was not what I could afford.
Right.
So I came back in order to learn it. And I was so hooked in that I have not become unobsessed since that time. And that's how many years ago?
25, 90? Something like that.
Yeah, 20, gone on 26. And I think part of the reason is that it is profound because my interest in issues of representation is that the way we represent the world is the way our mind thinks of reality. And so I felt this was a transition into another way of thinking. And I will say that this way of thinking is why we have such a profound generation gap that has happened. So I live in a world of where I am the oldest actual person in that world because I'm 2 years older than you.
Right.
Right. So, and everyone else is like, there's a few people who are 45. Then you got a few people who are 37.
Yeah.
And then below that, you've got a lot of people.
Yeah, you got a lot of people coming up.
And
using the tools, absolutely digital natives, et cetera.
And who think it's normal.
That's right.
So I think this hybrid, maybe this is a moment to take a break for me to show and share screen and show what that looks like just for a minute.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea, but I also would like you to add sculpture. Pardon me.
Yeah.
Add sculpture into your construct there.
Yeah, I want to explain because then I'll show you what that means because we're talking about abstract ideas here now, which are hard to understand unless you see a picture, which is worth 8,000 words. What this means, simulation technology, is that you simulate the world. You make a fake image, like in scientific imaging. In fact, it is something that started as scientific imaging, which means it was used for simulations in war games. That was and flight simulation and going to another planet simulation and then medical. And now it's completely wrapped up in this. So you take data, scientific information, facts, not the way a photograph makes an imprint of light of the surface of the world, but the deeper meaning, the scientific structures and mathematics and facts, right? Information. And from this, you bring it in a computer and the computer takes all that data and uses simulations technologies, imaging technologies to feed back that factual information in an image. So what you end up with is what is essentially an architectural model, a schematic, more or less detailed, and at this point, pretty damn detailed, right? As you know from Pixar movies and all of the special effects movies in Hollywood, which is why why I came back to America to do it, because American effects movies and cartoons are giant industry, and there's a lot of money between the DARPA, the Department of Defense, games. They all throw their lot together and they develop simulations technologies. So it looks like an architectural model, a schema, meaning you can sort of tell nowadays that it's fake. Many people can't, right? We can, because it's what we do. There are little tells, like in any trick. But what you get is a kind of hybrid between a sculpture and the image of that sculpture. So if you're a scientist, you don't necessarily use the super realistic rendering process. Rendering is the mechanics of turning something into a very lush photographic style image of this model. If you are a user or a gamer, those who are familiar with games, you actually walk around in there and you make the stuff with a lot of craft. And that's another way that it relates to sculpture, is that there's a tremendous amount of skill and craft and knowledge, material, technical skill base in crafting things. And it's related more to making things in the studio than having engineering chops. And I will say that I teach at the School of the Art Institute, and I have very talented students. And my best students are not the ones that have engineering proclivities.
Sure.
They are actually the people who understand making.
Right. Well, the other thing that I think is important to note in what we're talking about is that we're working in 3D programs. It is true that when you look at the computer screen, everything is flattened out. But at the same time, you're looking at a data map of dimensionality, of three-dimensionality that can be translated, of course, through 3D printing or CNC milling into a physical object. But at all times, you're rotating around a truly 3D object, even though, once again, it's like film in a way, in that it's frame by frame by frame, but your mind puts it together as a fluid flip. Yeah. And you're rotating and flipping and moving, panning, zooming. You're using all the words that are used in film for how you handle the camera.
Because
right?
In our case, I think Michael just said very unconsciously how you handle the camera.
Right.
The difference between this kind of software that we use is if everybody's used Photoshop. So Photoshop is based on the idea of the flat page, layers, and you pile up layers. What we do is we look through a simulation of a camera. We're not actually looking at a menu. We're looking at a digital camera, and it has a little menu around it, which is just the same menu that digital cameras have.
Yeah.
And we use those little menus, and so it's like we have a GoPro glued to our head. Our head is a camera. Right. And our arms are in there doing things. Right. So as you adapt to it, you actually feel totally that the experience physically is that you're in there making things like painting and
but it's truly dimensional. It's not like that Photoshop flat menu oriented experience. You're in it. You're deep in that space.
Right.
You lose your sense. You lose when you're really in there and you're kind of in that flow state. You lose your sense that you're not. You don't actually ever touch it. I mean, some people could do that, but very rarely is that part of a workflow. Mostly, but you're seeing it all the time, and you lose the sense that you're external to this. It feels like you're in it, you're on it, you're with it, right?
Yes, that is exactly the case. So now let's show a couple pictures because this is so abstract. Perfect. All right. It's hard. So yeah. So I have a work so-called early from 2007. I have about 4 works that I chose where you can really see this. And we could start with one just to give the feeling. All right. And this one is from 2007 and it's called The Seasons. And now I'm going to share screen. All right. So
fabulous piece. That was the real fake.
Yes, this is a piece. Oops. This is a piece from, let me just say it a little. It has audio to it, so you should be able to hear it. But so what this is this is a woman like a clock. She's slowly moving in a circle, and as she's moving, her body sort of decays. I actually use game software that is for making monster scan, and I had her get more bubbly. And then roses grow over her. And then I decided
Can you go ahead and play it, Claudia?
Yeah. Oh, and then I'll say this while I'm saying it. All right. Roses grow on here, and there's an audio. I will play it. That is actually white crumbling paper. So that's the setup. Now, what this is a.
No, on my end, I don't think it's playing.
Maybe it's only not. It's playing. It's just so slow. Maybe. Wait. Let's see. Oh, she's not rocking. Wait. Let's see.
There we go.
How's that? All right. Wait. Let me go. I'm gonna scrub a little. All right.
Okay.
So what happens is she starts to rot. We're not going to show that much because the whole idea of this is that it's another time scheme because it's a sculpture. It's a hybrid between a sculpture and a video. Right. What would happen if a sculpture was a movie? Not much. So that's what basically happens in all of my work.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
So you see the sculpture and then you enter this other time space, which no matter what happens with my work, it's very slow. It's not a good thing to show unless in a festival. I'm often asked to participate in festivals, and in fact, I'm going to be in Ann Arbor this year. But that's only by doing a simulation. I'm doing VR in these places. Because for a festival, nothing's happening. It's a sculpture and the time space is very slow.
So we're seeing the piece rotate extremely slowly, but we also see that there's is that a monitor that is in front of the projected image?
Yeah, so what that is, so that's a monitor in bit forms, one of those jumbo monitors. So that monitor is 7.5 feet tall. So which I'm 5'2".
At the same time, there's a projection. Is that over the monitor?
Yes.
It is.
Interesting. It's mapped.
That's great.
Why did I do that, you may ask?
Well, I was going to say that this piece has always reminded me a little bit of Bernini's Persephone.
Oh yeah, it sort of is that.
You know, how how Persephone is turning into the tree. Basically.
That is what happens. And then what happens is the flowers, I'll show you what happens in the end. And
so there's, by the way, sculpture to, a sort of literally that Renaissance moment that Bernini, or it wasn't Renaissance, I'm sorry, but that Bernini moment is when he captures the transition from one state to another state. Very similar to what, in your case, the time is slow, but it's not as slow, obviously, as Bernini's, and it starts to come to fruition before our very eyes. If we wait for it, if we watch it, if we're patient with it, and time has always been an aspect of sculpture, has it not?
implied time has been an aspect of representational sculpture and image, right? So there is compressed time in figuration. And I don't think it's true in abstraction. But sometimes it is if you work on that issue.
But also the notion that you circumambulate, that not all the views of the sculpture are available from a single viewpoint. And so it is.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It is, by definition, it's durational.
Although I'm very intentionally dealing with figuration because I'm interested in a kind of mythological liminal space halfway between real and unreal, in which time is compressed and you have this sense that it's not without time, but that time is infinite. And I also want to say the reason I have the monitor in here is that I was very intentionally making an installation or a sculpture. Oops, I turned it off. Right? This is a sculpture, so I put a 7.5-foot monitor leaning against the wall with an image of a sculpture. So I want to put the ending on it, and I'll show you one other one that has a little bit more motion in it, because I think there is a point that I think we're talking also about mise en scene, and that's something you also do and is very much a part of the show that I did the thing for. So here, that's when they start ungrowing. So what happens is I also use the functions in the space, and I think that's the difference between what happens with the real world and a digital world is we don't actually have death in there. And the difference between a digital fake sculpture and the real world is that in the real world, even if you're marble, you decay. And so we love classical sculptures with their arms broken off and all of that stuff that has a built-in process of decay, including, rusted steel and things that embody the time process within it, because they occupy space like our bodies do, and they die but slower. So they allow us to think, oh, maybe I can last 500 years. Yeah.
That's good.
I want to show one other one that has more mise en scene in it. That's actually theater. All right. Because I think that idea of theater and mise en scene and time is so embedded in what we're talking about. Because a photo is a slice of life, and there is this photographic quality in what we're doing, like a freeze frame or something. It's timeless. And then at the same time, it's total theater. It's installation-based work with a highly theatrical thing. So in your work, the work you did with this thing, you're always playing the comic, and it's highly theatricalized. It's like
extremely so, yeah.
Yeah, mine is more sad, but yours is sad. You're the sad clown.
Yeah.
So you're on tragedy and you're comedy.
That's right.
But it's both theater.
Right.
So I want to show one that sort of breaches the theater thing. I think it was the beginning of that. And this is also not a recent work. It was done in 2010. And interestingly, I want to throw in about this work. This kind of work that I was doing, and I'm sure Michael had the same experience, your recent work, you've gone much more towards materiality since you started working with marble and real heavy duty perma materials. But I never did that. I always stayed, but for you too, the art world had a lot of trouble accepting what we did. And I think it's because I asked myself, what's wrong with this? Like, it's video. You like video, right?
Yeah.
But there's something very upsetting about this liminal halfway thing that you couldn't quite tell what it was. So I've had these.
It's so true. Despite the art world's total love affair with the uncanny, which it totally has, there have been shows and so on and so forth. There is also this deep mistrust of the uncanny and of people that are purveyors of the uncanny.
Yeah,
of which
yeah.
We're sort of in that category. We're in that.
Yeah, I never thought of it as being about uncanny. That's good.
Yeah.
So like we are the gatekeepers, and that we're like the trip masters, and that's like scary as hell.
Yeah.
Who's the mythological one that's sitting at the death's door and brings people into the land of the dead?
Oh, you're talking about the fairy guy, the guy that runs.
No, it's a famous character, like a mythological god character that sits in the date. Everybody in the audience probably knows.
I can only think of the fairy guy, the guy that, and I don't remember his name.
Oh, maybe that is it.
Yeah.
That guy. Yeah. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is I have done works like this for a long time, and they were not acknowledged. And this work I'm about to show you, that one that you saw, I shouldn't be talking about selling, but
Charon, the psychopomp. Charon, the psychopomp, the ferryman of Hades, who carries souls of the newly deceased across the river Styx.
Maybe, but I think
and
it's
you have to
him.
pay him a coin for passage.
Whatever it is, it's not. It's scary.
Yeah, it's scary. He's not an. You got to pay, and if you don't pay, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Right.
You but all bad, right?
Yeah, all bad.
But I found that what's interesting is that in recent years, as this idea that this has been assimilated in terms of game culture, in terms of effects movies, in terms of your doctor uses it, everybody, it's part of the culture. All advertising seems to be cars and cleaning products are all ads for that. And everyone knows it's not real, but it's sort of halfway real. And so what's interesting is that my work suddenly started selling to museums. And these pieces, the one I'm about to show you, I never showed it once. I never showed it. Do you understand? And then suddenly 2 museums bought it because it was like no one would show it because there's something creepy about it because it is a kind of dance of mythological creatures that's uncanny where I'm using mocap. So not just the half real, half unreal quality of the figuration and the photography meets sculpture thing, but I added into that motion capture where I worked with Roberto Cifuentes, who performed, and I captured the motion and I made weird half sculpture, half living dead thing. All right, so that's why I want to show this. So we're gonna share screen again. It's called Recumulations, and I took a piece by Trisha Brown. That was choreographed very static, called Accumulations, where she lies on the floor, moving barely. And I hung a performer, a Latin American performance artist named Roberto Cifuentes, a man, from strings, and had him it was very painful, and had him perform this. And I cut it exactly to the Trisha Brown combo. And it was her motions. And then Edmund Campion.
Instead of being on the floor, he's vertical, but he's not on the wall. He's hanging.
No, he was actually horizontal, lying on his back, hung on strings. And he was captured all around because lasers read his body bottom top from all around. And I took the skeleton and put it in this hybrid, racially mixed sculptural. That's why I was using the ambient occlusion look of sculpture. And Edmund Campion wrote music to it. And so this is truly liminal land of the dead.
Go ahead and hit play.
All right. I'm playing. Wait a minute, let's make it big. Wait, do I have to make this louder? Can you hear it?
Can't
Oh,
hear
here it comes.
well on
It's
mine.
coming. It'll come. It gets louder.
But again, you have taken the skeleton of the dancer from your collaborator, and you've added it directly to this figure.
Yes, the skeleton is real. The person is an avatar I made.
You have a website, and you also have a Vimeo channel where people can go and directly experience these things.
Yeah.
Right?
Right,
What's your Vimeo handle?
My Vimeo is Claudia Hart.
Excellent. And then also claudiahart.com, right?
ClaudiaHart.com and Vimeo and Claudia Hart Vimeo.
Yeah, good.
So yeah, I mean, we don't have the music, and the music is great, but that allows us to talk over it. Yeah, unfortunately, my PC is for rendering, and I don't have speakers.
We'll have to let the audience visit your Vimeo website next
But I think you could see that this is sort of creepy. Why? Because I broke her neck. I had her body do things that you can't quite do. She's floating above the wall, but the wall is connected to her hip. So the relationship of, there's no gravity in here. So I was very intentionally playing with the main qualities of the physical world. To me, what's missing in a virtual simulation, there's no gravity. There's no time, there's no death, and there's no gravity. And so the liminality or the uncanny comes from the fact that you play with those things.
It sounds like Nietzsche's eternal return.
Yes, it is that. And I think so therefore it is sculpture that doesn't have decay, that doesn't have gravity, and that doesn't have time in it. Because you only get the document, and the document is the animation or the still image or the movie. So other than that, it's sculpture.
Yeah, it's sort of sculpture you can't get to, right?
Yeah, it's right. It's sculpture in a dream.
Yeah, right. That's fascinating, actually.
So should I turn it off?
Well, I thought it might be interesting at this moment to kind of transition a little bit and talk about your piece that's in Sight and Parasite.
All right, that's good.
I don't know if you set up the image, but I have it if you don't.
You have it. I don't have it.
Okay, let me go there. Now, of course.
Although that other video that I showed for a moment, I actually took the animation that I made for your show and covered the characters with that piece. I rechanneled the thing I did for you.
Oh, there you go. That I noticed that, and I think it might be interesting a little bit because actually the piece you did for the I'm not sharing my screen. I got to share my screen first. The piece you did for Sight and Parasite kind of really, or at least to me, has a real semiotic kind of feel to it. It seems like it's engaged with signs. And then at the same time, you do this all the time. You texture the characters or the physical objects. Can you see that, by the way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this was when you used one of my targets, which was the stripes, the very variegated stripes. This is what came up when you were in Claudia's app. And then you're saying you also repurposed that. Is that right?
Yeah. You want me? If you stop share, I'll show that for a minute too.
Okay, but hold on just a second. Let me get that question out. Yeah. The question is, you have a long history with semiotics, right? You studied it, you've employed it, you used it, you're really interested in it. And this seems to occupy that territory, right? A little less about sculpture, a little more about signs and using signs. Is that right?
Yeah, I have, my work is very visual, but I'm also very involved in a conceptual layer to it. And so this is a medium which also has involved language. from my first work, before I started doing this, right before, I was doing illustrated books and paintings as books that I wrote. And then there were oil paintings, and then there were a world that there were props. I made sculptures too. They were, let's say, a book world. And then I started, the reason I fell in love with the 3D stuff, aside from the fact that I thought it was a paradigm shift and gigantically important, which it is, it allowed me to combine writing and sculpture and physicality. So I'm very involved in surfaces. And so the fact that you have this hyper surface, the texture map or the mapping, because what 3D actually is, aside, it makes it easier to understand when you say it's an architectural map. But what it actually is a topographical map, which is like the map of United States. It's a round thing, which has been flattened out on a UV, or you could say it's XY. There's no, Z. No, it's not Z, it's XY, right? So
it's XY, right?
Yeah. So it's flattened out. So it's actually a Cartesian map of a round thing, of a sculptural thing. So it is actually halfway in between. So what this is I couldn't decide between the surface and the, and the object, because I am both a graphicist or a painter. I'm a flat person and a round person. So that, this was the resolution of that. And that's its uncanniness also, Michael. It's an impossible object that is both flat and XYZ at the same time.
Well, I think you also bring something. You talked about writing. You're involved in language, and you have the conceptual layer, and then, but now the writing is multifold. Like, first of all, you're writing the character into existence in a way, that just through the act of working with the software and doing those things. But then the other aspect of it is that you're writing the story or the stage, the mise en scène. You're writing that up, right? Because you've created the whole thing. And I often say that when I work on these projects, I feel more like a writer than I do a sculptor, because I'm always, composing these moments in my head like a playwright might. And then the third thing, of course, is now you're also including those words or signs, words, signs, directly as texture maps onto the surface, and then also resolving that situation that you were talking about between flat and round. And that's those are multiple levels of writing that I think you're going through in the works, right? And they all sort of, resonate and reflect one another, and, sound waves bounce around within there. I think that
I think that's there was a moment of epiphany when I realized that. So those two pieces I showed were from 2007 and 2010. And it was when I hit the dolls. So that was 2014, that I realized, I can just wrap them in language. That I didn't have to do one or the other, that I could actually, I don't know why it took me that long to figure it out, but I thought, I can just put wrapping paper on them.
Right.
And then that was it, because so I keep thinking I should get rid of those strobing signs, but I can't.
It's interesting to me because I've thought about it quite a bit, that there have been a few people who have worked, I think the sculptor's name is Oliver Herring, who worked making physical sculptures that he then texture mapped with photographs of the person. And he didn't use software. He didn't use computers to do so. And I've always found it to be especially interesting. But he's kind of rare in the use of sculpture at physical objects to give that kind of photo resolution to a sculpture, or even a pattern, a texture, so on and so forth. Whereas on the other hand, in computer graphics, this is easy and is absolutely essential part of texture mapping. There's very little big media, digital media that you see that hasn't been texture mapped.
Well, photogrammetry, you see sculptors who are doing printed sculptures, of which both of us are pioneers of.
Yeah, that's right.
And now, when we started, you certainly couldn't do that, but now you can print, you can make printed sculptures made out of pulp paper, which you can actually make archival, that have the photo image of it integrated within the paper.
Yeah.
And you see that people doing post-photographic sculpture.
Who else besides Oliver Herring is doing that?
The guy, his name, now I'm like having a senior moment. He shows at Bitforms and he has a French name and it begins with C.
Okay, there you go.
So
shows at Bitforms Gallery. So we might be able to find that at Bitforms Gallery.
Yeah, right.
And the
Should I look them up?
Do you remember what the paper pulp process is called?
Well, all of this is called photogrammetry.
Photogrammetry.
Photogrammetry is the hybrid between a photo and a model. So if you, this has been going on for maybe 7 years, but it's so advanced at this point that you could get free software that does this. You can get a free app, take a picture of you and your face is mapped onto a model of your head. And
so back to the exhibition and back to your project in the exhibition. You chose the one target, or there were two targets actually, but you chose a target that was directly on the wall and was flat. And then you did a animation that also was a texture map, by and large. You put it onto other things at later dates. That was also flat. And I'm just kind of curious.
Why did I do it?
Despite your commitment to these forms and to all the strangeness of this space, why were you thinking, why did you gravitate to the flat?
Because it was wallpaper.
Yeah.
And
talk about your relationship to wallpaper.
Well, I make it. I make augmented reality wallpaper, and Michael, I love Saul LeWitt also. And I did make Saul LeWitt wallpaper, which I am using to create an architectural niche for a giant caryatid augmented reality printed sculpture in the show in Linz that we are both in the fall. They will use my Saul LeWitt wallpaper. I hope that I changed it enough, right? But basically, yeah, that's why I did it. It's wallpaper.
Wow, fantastic.
So it's just paper on a three-dimensional object, the building.
Yeah.
So I view the building as a sculpture. It's architecture.
Well, the other thing that you talked about, and it's on my website under the area, and I think it's in the book as well, your written statement. You talked a lot about friendship, and you also talked about sort of community versus appropriation versus, so I'm interested to hear you talk a little bit more about that. I mean, obviously we've known each other for years and years and years, but it was Ed and Marat who curated you into the show. And, but I thought that was kind of an interesting connection. You picked up on that aspect of.
Well, I also was interested in this, that you were intentionally, this was a community, right? The people in the show, at least the first round of it, I don't know if they curated because there were many iterations, but we all know each other and we're all friends with them.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I was interested in the paradox of the idea of the digital friendship, which is of course a surface or emptied out version. It's on the surface, just the way what I did, wallpaper with wallpaper on it. Animated wallpaper
That's
on
right.
static
And you
wallpaper.
did use the thumbs up, I think that literally is the
Yeah,
Facebook
that's
thumbs
the
up,
friend.
right?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, it's all, and it's Facebook on
Right.
the logo.
Right.
I mean, wait, I'm gonna put that thing because it has no sound and we could keep sharing. Wait, let me see if I could do that.
I've got it if you want me to do it. I've got it right
No,
here.
not that one. I
Oh.
want to put the one where you see it all over everything.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
made a sculpture with it. If I can, yeah. If I can like figure it out. Wait, here. Is this showing? And of course, there's no audio. This has beautiful music is central to what I do. So without music, it's just nothing.
Nice.
But this is the wall.
Right.
They're playing cello, and the cellist improvised live to the image. Oh no, wait! I motion captured her. Excuse me. This is a mocap of the cellist live, and then I put it in both bodies. The real human body and the cello avatar. But and then the patterns, the graphics around it actually are responsive to the audio as well. So it's real-time response in the texture, and in the people are motion captured, etc. But that's your Eat Me wallpaper that I used as wallpaper. And guess what? Is that the Saul LeWitt back there? No, that's another wallpaper. Is it the Saul LeWitt wallpaper? No, it's another one. But I did make wallpaper exactly like this with the inversion, the Saul LeWitt and its inverse. But wait a minute, I think I took it down because I was afraid I was gonna get sued. But I did, the reason I did use it was that Saul LeWitt should be vinyl augmented reality wallpaper. He
Absolutely.
So should.
Absolutely.
He would want that.
I think so. I totally think so. Well, listen, Claudia, this has really been a lot of fun to talk to you about your work.
Yeah, and this is a good ending because there's me and you. You're the big one and I'm the little one.